Being in the booth, being in the booth and calling the game. That is the thrill that I get every night, and it never changes. I'm very fortunate to have had the career that I've had. 48 years in the National Hockey League. This is year 48, and I've enjoyed each and every day in the NHL. And of course, as I mentioned previously, I spent a number of decades in broadcasting, and every day is a thrill. Every day I get up and I look forward, what's today going to bring? I'm very fortunate, and it's been a privilege and a thrill for me. And there's nothing better than sitting in the booth and calling a game. I'm Jeff Rimmer, television voice of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and I'm in the stands.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Into the Stands. I'm your host, the scoreboard guy, Dave Fetzer, and today we have a special guest who's been a prominent figure in the world of sports broadcasting for over 4 decades. Joining me today is none other than Jeff Rimmer, a name that resonates with sports fans across several cities in both the U.S. and Canada. Jeff, it's an honor that you came out of the Bally's booth and into the stands with us. We're here to talk about the journey that brought you where you are and get to know the person behind all your achievements. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So to start off, can you kind of share a bit about your journey into the world of sports broadcasting? How'd you get started and what inspired you to pursue a career in this field?
Well, it's a long story, but I was born in Toronto and lived there until high school. And my mom remarried after my dad passed away, and we moved to Calgary, Alberta. Walked into homeroom in the 10th grade, and the first person I came across, and we instantly became friends and are still great friends today, and that's the president of the Blue Jackets, John Davidson. And JD and I immediately hit it off. There was an outdoor rink right outside our typing class. And the odd time we would skip typing class and we'd go out on the outdoor rink. And JD was an exceptional goaltender, then playing midget hockey. And he suggested one day that I go and try out for the AAA team with him. And I said, there's no way that I've got any shot of making this team. Long and short of it is, I got talked into it. We went to the old Rosecon Arena that still stands, and I'm the first person in the history of AAA hockey to be cut before practice started. I got tapped on the shoulder and told that, hey, kid, House League starts Monday. I should have known my bib number that I was wearing was in the 200s. There was just a massive humanity on the ice. So Monday, I go to the outdoor rink in Kingsland, which is a suburb of Calgary. And the next thing you know, I'm on the snowbank, not even taking part in the House League. And at that point, I decided that my hockey career was coming to an end, and it's a sport that I grew up loving and was very, very close to. And at that point, I decided I'm not going to be a National Hockey League player, which was honestly my dream. I'll do the next best thing and focus on becoming a broadcaster. And finished high school. I was, you've heard of the rink rats, like Johnny
Yep.
Gaudreau of the Blue Jackets. I was a radio television rat and hung around the stations and convinced them to give me a high school and college report. Uh, Went to college in Calgary, ended up talking the community station there into giving me a half-hour television show, and ended up doing some play-by-play. The team that John played for, along with Danny Gare, who at one point was my broadcast partner, Mike Rogers, 3-time 100-point player in the National Hockey League, who I later lived with in Edmonton. And my big break was I got a phone call, unsolicited, and asked if I was interested in moving to Edmonton and working for CBC, which was the Canadian network.
Yeah.
And of course, I went to Edmonton, interviewed for the job, got it.
Unfortunately, technical issues do happen, and at this point in the interview, Jeff received a phone call, which caused the platform that I used to stop recording his audio. Luckily, this lapse in recording didn't last long, and we only missed a few seconds of the story. The main detail here is that he was hired by CBC, and he was asked to do the Olympics in 1976, which is what you will hear him talk about now.
1976, I ended up with the premier event, which was gymnastics. Nadia Comaneci worked alongside ABC's Chris Schenkel. Unfortunately, he's passed away now, but preeminent sportscaster and known worldwide. And worked alongside him. And I attended all these Romanian and Russian events before the Olympics. And I was helping him pronounce those names, which was a thrill to me in my own right.
For sure.
Did the Olympics, got married, married a girl from LA. I promised her after the Olympics, because she couldn't handle the minus 40 degree below zero temperature in January and February in Edmonton, and minus 40.
Not many of us can.
Yeah, minus 40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet. I guess I'm being long-winded with my career, but I'm telling you how it all started here. Went to
I appreciate
LA.
it.
Went to LA, where she was from. Tried to get a job with the Los Angeles Kings. Almost got hired by the Kings to do radio, but the owner of the team, who by the way was Canadian, said I sounded too Canadian, and he was trying to tell the people of Los Angeles that hockey's not a Canadian game. Long and short of it is, I ended up getting a television job doing weekend sports. Couldn't get a full-time job, and told my wife at that point that we needed to move back to Canada. Applied for a couple of jobs, and wouldn't you know it, I got two offers the same day. Accepted the first offer to go back to CBC, the Canadian network in Calgary, oddly enough, and accepted the job. And then about a half an hour later, I got a phone call from Dick Irvin, who was a legendary voice of the Montreal Canadiens on radio and television, and he offered me a job, and I said, sorry, I'd already accepted a job. I'm going to Calgary. And he said, hold on a minute. I'll call you back in a half an hour. Called me back in a half an hour, offered me $2,000 a year more, $2,000 for the entire year.
Yeah.
And what really clinched it, though, is he said, you can work the Montreal Canadiens hockey broadcast with me. Well, that was the clincher. And I called Calgary back and I said, hey, this is my dream. And I've got to take this job. They totally understood. I went to Montreal. I ended up doing Expos pre and post game. Ended up doing pre and post for the Montreal Canadiens. And then my journey really started. I was there for 7 years. My kids were born in Montreal. And the general manager of the radio TV station, CFCF, left and went to Baltimore, the WBAL 50,000 watt station. And he said, I know you want to come back to the States. I want you to come with me as a sports director. And that too was a no-brainer, and moved to Baltimore. And when the Capitals found out that I had moved, David Poyle, then the general manager of the Capitals, offered me an opportunity to first be the host of their telecast, and eventually became their play-by-play guy. And that's really how the play-by-play career started. Long-winded, but that's it.
I appreciate it. So, you kind of mentioned there, you've been in many cities, many teams, Calgary, Montreal, Edmonton, even calling some baseball in Baltimore, and then working with the Caps, the Panthers, and now the Jackets. Do you ever find it hard to differentiate between being a fan and being an employee, or do you kind of use that to your advantage sometimes?
No, I use it to my advantage, Dave. Very much so. I'm all in, and have been all in for my entire career. It's, for me, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. And at the same time, I respect the fans that are watching and listening. They mean a lot to me. I wouldn't have the career if it wasn't that way. But as much as I'm a broadcaster and have loved every stop along the way, I'm a fan of the teams. I'm all in.
That's awesome. So throughout your career, like you kind of mentioned also, you've covered various sports. Is there a particular sport or a moment that kind of stands out to you as your favorite or most memorable?
Well, obviously hockey. Although I enjoyed baseball, I mean, I have so many great things to look back on. The Olympics, as I mentioned, in 1976 with Nadia Comaneci, which was the preeminent event in the Olympics that year. Moving on to Montreal and getting an opportunity to see the Canadians win 4 Stanley Cups. Now, I was not working. I was not under the employ of the hockey team. I worked for the radio television station. 1981, the Expos. It's called Blue Monday when Rick Monday hit the game-winning home run to knock the Expos out, despite the fact they had a fabulous team. Dodgers went on to win the World Series, and Rick Monday with that home run, and I'll never forget it, sailing over the fence at Olympic Stadium, and it was deathly silence before a sellout crowd watching Monday skate around, or not skate, but run around the
Yeah.
bases, and see him hit home plate, and just the craziness that went on with the Dodgers advancing and talking, and became pretty good friends with Tommy Lasorda, then the manager of the Dodgers, and he was an often guest on my pregame show, and it was a surreal moment, but that was certainly a highlight. Moving on to Baltimore and becoming very, very close with Cal Ripken Jr. to the point
Yeah.
where on the post-game shows, on more than one occasion, I would get phone calls from fans, and I'd be taking calls late at night. And one night in particular, I get a phone call from a fan who says to me, and I certainly argued the point, but
At this point, Jeff received another phone call. And to get you back up to speed on the story he's currently telling, he is going to discuss what a fan who gave him a call talked about in regards to Cal Ripken's games played and games started streak.
and innings games played was self-serving, didn't mean a lot. The guy called me up and said, I'm an apologist for the Ripken family. Cal Sr. was struggling as manager. They started 016 and 018, and he eventually was fired. It was the cover of Sports Illustrated. Billy Ripken, the second baseman, who's now a staple on the Baseball Network, Major League Baseball Network, and Cal, I was very close with. And anyway, this guy said I should change my name from Jeff Rimmer to Jeff Ripken because I was nothing more than an apologist. And those friendships that I made over the years are certainly special. Cal invited me back when he broke Ty Cobb's record, but at that point I was really involved with broadcasting hockey and baseball, and there was no way that I could go. But I still keep in contact with Cal. My friendship in Montreal with the Expos, with Gary Carter, uh, those friendships are lifelong, and I'm very fortunate, bottom line.
That's incredible. My brother would love to hear that. Huge Cal Ripken fan. So broadcasting also includes a lot of travel and things like that. Is there anything that memorable experiences that happened while you were out on the road covering a game?
Uh, Not really. It's the game itself that, for me, are the memorable moments.
Yeah.
Travel wise, I mean, obviously, it's not always glamorous. There are issues, particularly with hockey in the winter and being out in Western Canada where the plane won't start, or something hit the windshield and you've got to wait to get a replacement windshield. Back in the days when the Blue Jackets had their own plane.
Yep.
But nothing really memorable along those lines, but certainly some issues where we've been on the plane and ready to take off, and then there's a malfunction of one of the engines, and we end up having to remain in that city and check back into a hotel. There's a time in Denver when the snow was so bad we couldn't get to the airport, and stayed an extra night there before moving on to the next stop. So, yeah, those are the kind of memorable moments there, but it's the games themselves that really stick out for me.
That's pretty cool. So, of sports broadcasting, what do you find the most challenging, and how do you kind of overcome that?
Well, I don't really find anything challenging for me. there's nothing better than being in the booth and calling the game. But I wouldn't say it's challenging, but it's the preparation. And for me, you're on the air for 3 hours. So you've got to put at least maybe 4.5, 5, as much as 6 hours in the prep for that next game. And that's something that I really take to heart. Uh, Particularly here in hockey, I do my best to watch the team's previous game. I do my best to visit game days with players and coaches and visiting broadcasters, or if we're on the road, the home broadcasters, to get as much information as you can. You've got to be prepared. I mean, there's issues along the way, things can happen, and the more information that you have in preparation, the better broadcast you're going to have. And you want that information not only for yourself, but your broadcast partner. And the best broadcast is when there's conversations between the two, and you may start a sentence and your broadcast partner will finish it, or vice versa.
Yeah. So, over the years, I'm sure the technology advances and everything have changed quite significantly from when you first started out up in Calgary and Edmonton and all that. How have these changed what it is that you do as being play by play?
Well, I just talked about information.
Yeah.
With social media such as it is, and with all the different podcasts, with all the different sites that are available on the internet, it's certainly made the job a lot easier, because I go back in the day when I was buying 10 newspapers a day, particularly when I
Yeah.
was in Washington and Montreal, and Baltimore for that matter, and Florida. You can walk into a newspaper stand and you can get today's or yesterday's paper. Back in the day, you may get a 2 or 3 day old paper, but now with the internet such as it is, it's so much better in accumulating information. And that's certainly a technical advance for me and for those moving forward into this great industry.
So speaking of, moving forward, is there any piece of advice or anything that you could say to people who are just trying to start their career in sports broadcasting, based on your own experiences and things that you've been through?
First and foremost, get the education. You cannot be over ready for the job, and once you've got the background and you think you're ready to advance, then it's a question of networking and opening doors. And if one door closes, go to the next door. I can't tell you how many times in the early years, and I was very, very fortunate that I would go to one radio station and try to sell myself and I was lucky in Calgary. It's, pretty fair sized city. And I was very fortunate to talk them into giving me a high school and college sports report at a young age. I think I was, 17, 18 years of age. And it kind of opened up doors for me. So, as I said, I initially went to one radio station, and they really didn't want to even entertain a discussion with me. So I went to the next one. And it's all a question of networking, getting people to know you, and moving forward. And if one door closes, as I said, head to the next one, because sooner or later you knock on enough doors, something's going to open. And you've got to start small. Uh, I mentioned that I got the opportunity to go to Edmonton after college, but I did make a short stop in Lethbridge, Alberta, a town of 42,000 people, and I did radio, television, sports there, and my name got out, and that's how I got the contact from Edmonton. As it turned out, the sports director in Edmonton, Ernie Afaganis, who was one of the premier sportscasters in Canada and still highly regarded, although he's now retired, he was from Lethbridge and heard about me, and he was the one that made the contact. So it doesn't matter if you're in Pocatello, Idaho, and you want to be a Major League Baseball broadcaster. I'll give you a perfect example. My time in Florida, I was doing a talk show in addition to doing the Florida Panthers games. And I had a producer by the name of John Shambi. John Shambi, the same guy's doing Major League Baseball today on ESPN and the Chicago Cubs. And Shambi was just simply a producer. He wanted to be a baseball broadcaster. So what did he do? He went to Pocatello, Idaho, and started in that lower league to
Yeah.
open up doors. And today he's a network broadcaster that does just an outstanding job. And I can name several other broadcasters that I've come across over the years that started small. Bob Wischusen, who's the voice of the New York Jets, he too worked at WQAM in Miami.
So, a couple more quick questions here. Beyond calling games, what are some of your interests and hobbies, and how do you like to unwind and relax? Once the game's over or once the season's over.
Well, I like to play golf. Um, I like to spend time with my grandson, and he's turned into quite a little athlete. He's 7 years old. So when I get away in the summertime, that's my time to unwind because I'm all in during the season. I don't get to see my family's in Florida, and I don't get a chance to see them other than at Christmas time for a few days. And I'm looking forward in a couple of weeks to the All-Star break and the
Yep.
mandatory 5-day break, so I'll spend some time with them. But during the season, and it's just one sport now. I've done two sports and in the past, baseball and hockey, and that pretty well takes up 365 days of the year. So I enjoy my off
Absolutely.
time now for sure.
So we're coming up to we're over halfway through the Blue Jackets year, and pretty much
Going
everybody
fast,
knows.
going fast, too
Absolutely.
fast.
Everybody around the Jackets knows that end of the season is the first day of your retirement, and there's a lot of history there. I know even you know broadcast Hall of Fame for the Florida Panthers, if I'm not mistaken, and a lot of accolades and things like that. So congratulations on all that. Congrats on the retirement. Um,
Appreciate that. Appreciate it.
but out of all that, what are you going to miss the most?
Being in the booth, being in the booth and calling the game. That is the thrill that I get every night, and it never changes. I'm very fortunate to have had the career that I've had. 48 years in the National Hockey League. This is year 48. And I've enjoyed each and every day in the NHL. And of course, as I mentioned previously, I spent a number of decades in broadcasting, and every day is a thrill. Every day I get up and I look forward, what's today going to bring? I'm
That's
very
awesome.
fortunate, and it's been a privilege and a thrill for me. And there's nothing better than sitting in the booth and calling a game.
And as a fan, and on behalf of my friends that are all fans, it's been a lot of fun kind of watching the more or less farewell tour of all the different throwback
Yeah,
videos that we're seeing and all that. So congrats on all that. That's the final question about what it is that you do. However, I do have 4 questions that I like to ask everybody at the end of the episode, just kind of tie everything together and get some people's opinions that they kind of have nothing to do with what it is that you do. First of all, if you could have dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
boy, I've made a lot of great friends that I look forward to moving forward having dinner with. Growing up, the greatest hockey player that I had the good fortune of watching, and I've seen many from Gretzky to Crosby to uh, Guy Lafleur, all Hall of Famers, Artemi Panarin, my good friend Dino Ciccarelli. Uh, any and all of those, I've got time to have dinner and a drink with, and I look forward to seeing many of them here in retirement for sure. Bobby Orr and I became great friends when I went to Florida, and it wasn't anything that I did. I was doing a national radio show in addition to everything else for 3 years in Canada and the U.S., and my son actually produced the show, and one Sunday night, JD and I doing the show, and it was inside the NHL. And my son called to get Bobby Orr on, and Orr said, "Your dad, Jeff Rimmer?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you tell your dad to call me, and I'll decide if I want to do the show." And my son called and said, "What you do to Bobby sounds like he's pretty upset with you." And I said, "I have never talked to him in my life." And anyway, long story short, called him. He said, "I'll make a deal. We'll do your show. I don't do a lot of interviews, but I'll do yours if you come up and have lunch and play golf with me." Well, that was a no-brainer.
That's awesome.
And I've spent some time with him at lunch and dinner, and I plan on doing more of that. Sidney Crosby, I guess a bit of a villain here in Columbus, but let me tell you, he's a great hockey player and he's a better person.
That's
Wayne
awesome.
Gretzky, I've had Gretzky, Paul Coffey, two Hall of Famers at my place in Montreal back when we had the World Cup of Hockey, and they were there for a barbecue in my backyard. And
It's
those
incredible.
are great times that I look forward to continuing to have here in the future.
Absolutely. What is your favorite venue that you have worked in?
Oh boy. The building right here in Columbus is special. It's been my home for 20 years. I do enjoy some of the Canadian rinks, and it's nothing more than the fact that they have gondolas where you're literally hanging over the ice.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, when I first started doing play-by-play, the old Boston Garden and the old Chicago Stadium, you used to have to walk through the stands, climb a stair down, and you'd be in a bucket over the ice. And you could literally reach out and you feel like you could touch the players there. Those were great experiences.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those old buildings, and some of them are still in Canada, I guess those ones are special. But the crowd in Nationwide is second to none. Those fans deserve a winner here more than any fans in the NHL. They're so supportive. Team
Absolutely.
struggling, still we have a sellout after sellout after sellout. It's the best, and it's very special to me.
There's nothing quite like the fifth line. So, I don't know if you have time to, but are there any TV shows that you're currently watching, working your way through?
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of television to the disgust of my wife, uh, but I do like Newsroom on Apple TV. It's just a great show with great actors, and I don't have to watch it every week, but I can catch up and even watch some episodes when I'm on the team plane and flying from city to city to continue. And by the way, we're going on a 5-game road trip out here to Western Canada, and I plan on catching up on the series as we head west.
That's awesome. It is a great show. I've watched a couple of episodes of that. And the final question I got for you. We're going to say they're making a movie about your life. You get to pick who plays you. Who you picking?
I saw that question beforehand, and that's one I don't really know if I can answer. Um, it's a great question. I mean, there's so many great actors, but I don't know if there's anybody there that I could really equate to myself. I'll let guys like you decide
That's fair.
who would play Jeff Rimmer.
That's fair. Jeff, that's all I've got for you. I appreciate your time. And now, if there's any causes or anything that's near to your heart, now's your time to go ahead and talk about any of that.
We're very big, and my wife and I are very big into animals. We've got 3 dogs. We've had all kinds of cats. And I believe in donating money to the various, the SPCA and other people of interest that are supporting animals, particularly those that are unfairly treated. And I've certainly seen my fair share of those.
Yeah, that's. I don't know. I never will understand the people who can treat
Nor can
animals
I.
poorly.
Nor
I'll
can I.
never understand it. So, Jeff, I really appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and congratulations on everything.
Well, no, thank you for having me, and I look forward to perhaps talking to you again down the road.
Absolutely.